up front because we have a couple partners on the line who have important information to share, but I also don't want to keep them in case they have to go back to other things that are going on. So V, you ready? Okay, let us unmute you.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is V Nguyen. I'm the senior policy advisor for Council President González's office. Aaron asked me to join today just to share a couple of things of what's going on with the city. I know that there are lots of questions, and the first thing I'll start with is just acknowledging that this is a really weird time for all of us. This is a new normal. I've been seeing people use the word unprecedented, and I just want to remind folks that we have, as a collective, as humans that live in society, that we have survived epidemics and pandemics before. So this is not new. It's just been a while, and that we're going to get through this, and we're going to get through this by looking out for one another and following directions, staying inside, and just doing modifying our behavior for whatever it is that we need to get out of this together, and figuring out how to keep people whole. So there's that. The second thing I'll share is that Council President González, as of today, is leaving her maternity leave, coming out of maternity leave early. Some of you know that she is a new mom, and was really excited to take the 12 weeks, and due to unforeseen circumstances, I don't think anybody was planning on working like this or living through this. She's coming out of leave early so that she can be responsive to the things that our communities and our constituents are asking for. So I'll try to run through this quick. My email address is v.nguyen@seattle.gov, so it's just right there displayed on my screen. Feel free to reach out directly, or if you don't get my contact information, Aaron Okuno also has it. The first thing I'll start with is childcare. Right now, with SBS being closed, I think we were all, well, at least some of us, were tuned into the governor's press conference the other day, and he laid out his expectation that the school districts will be the running point in helping families figure out childcare arrangements right now, particularly for our first responders and our healthcare staff. So from the conversations and the updates that I've received, SBS is definitely taking this head on, and they are, I suspect, close to an announcement soon of what this can look like. And the city of Seattle is, trying to figure out how we can be supportive and helpful. But just like anything else, if it's not perfect the first go, we're learning as we go and trying to be responsive to the issues that are raised by community and by partners. I see that SBS is here, and so I don't want to speak for them, but my understanding and my conversations with folks at the city, from the mayor's office to the Department of Education and Early Learning, that we're trying to help people figure this out. We're trying to help the school district figure this out, and that I just want to assure you, let you all know that the city, the county, and the state government are all working together and talking to each other to figure out how we bring this online for the families that need to access this. Okay, so next item. Earlier this week, Mayor Jenny Durkan announced a $5 million fund to I don't want to call it expand food access, because we're still trying to figure this out, but deepen the food access for families that are already vulnerable. So right now, the way that it's been sketched out is that it's a $5 million pot of money, and it works out to about $800 worth of vouchers that'll be mailed out in 2 increments to families that are participating in our Fresh Bucks program, and programs that the city funds related to childcare. So that's CCAP, SPP, and then also ECAP. And so I think I feel like the list is longer. I just can't keep it top of mind right now. I want to recognize and acknowledge that we know that this doesn't meet the level of anxiety and food security that's needed in community right now, even if it wasn't a time of crisis. But the city is definitely looking to identify more funds so that we can grow so that we can help more households that have been impacted in the last few weeks to have their food needs met. Hold on. Let's see. I had a list and that just went away. Okay. Small business supports. There have been a number of small business relief funds that have been identified or that have come online. Council is also taking that up, and I think the pot of money has grown to about 2.4 million right now. Don't quote me on that. I just know that there was an initial fund and then there's more money. And essentially what this is for a lot of us who, understand like the limitations around funding is that this is a redirect of federal funding from the CDBG grants that we receive as a city. So this is the reason why we're able to essentially circumvent the gift of public dollars prohibition that we have from our state constitution. And because it's CDBG dollars, from what I understand, that's the reason why the thresholds are set where they are right now. So, it's really focused on the micro businesses, which is like up to 5 employees. And for the business owners, they have to be at about 60 to 80% of AMI. And again, we know that this doesn't meet the level of need right now, but this one's a little bit trickier because of, again, our state constitution having a very clear prohibition of gift of public dollars for private benefit. There are a lot of people who are trying to figure this out at the city and at the state level. And, yesterday, there are a number of relief packages that are also coming from the feds. So we're really, really hopeful that, we can get relief out the door and to where it's needed as soon as possible. Also this week, the mayor has signed 2 executive orders around a moratorium on evictions, which is not the same thing as rent freezes, for the next 60 days for both residential and commercial businesses. One of the things that's a little bit funny about our laws is that while we know that there are a lot of anxieties about needing to freeze rent, essentially people cannot access a lot of the dollars that are there to help, like last minute relief dollars to keep people in their homes. Like that only happens currently when there's imminent risk of eviction. And so that is usually within a 30-day window as opposed to being 2 or 3 months out. And so from what I hear from landlords, or at least what's reported, is that a lot of landlords don't want to evict people, but by putting people into eviction proceedings, those households, those tenants are able to access funds that are intended to help people stay in their homes. And so not a great solution, but and I wish that wasn't the answer that I had, but it's essentially the safety net that we are willing to pay for and tax ourselves for right now. Utility relief was also announced by by the city earlier this week, and then the governor announced it yesterday. I'll share a link with Aaron. There's a website on the city, seattle.gov, that kind of helps people walk through this of what it means to have some utility relief for the households right now. And we have assurances that nobody's power should be cut off in this time, because that's not what we're going to do. Unemployment benefits, these are handled by the state. One of the first things that happened as we started getting a sense of what we needed to do, I'm really, really grateful to our state legislators who met the $100 million ask and then actually doubled it. And so there was a $200 million aid package related for our state's response to the coronavirus COVID-19 response. So my understanding is that at the minimum, 25 million of that is going to go towards unemployment benefits. The Employment Security Department, they're trying to build the plane as they're flying with these emergency rules. And so if you hear of folks who are getting denied, who are having trouble accessing their benefits, please do have them email my office. So that way, just having a clear sense of the challenges and the barriers that workers are having will help us in our advocacy as we communicate with our state partners. And on that note, excuse me, one of the things that I've been struggling with is that in order to apply for unemployment benefits, you have to have a social security number, and for obvious reasons, not all workers have that. And so I don't know at this point in time what the the solution is, but I do know that we need to do something so that we can, you know, make sure that our undocumented loved ones and neighbors and friends have a safety net around them as well. The last thing I'll close with is that, sorry. Transit announced yesterday that they're going to be metro cuts. Sorry, of about 25%. And my understanding is these are likely going to follow ridership patterns. And so the 7 is likely going to be more likely maintained than like something like the D line into Ballard, because, you know, there's no one on the D line right now. Sorry, folks. I'm getting over a little bit of a cold.
You okay? Need a break?
Sorry?
You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm just getting over a little bit of a cold. And so it's just, I've been self-isolating and not being around other humans. So I know I ran through that really fast. Again, feel free to reach out to me, v.nguyen. The spelling is right on the screen at seattle.gov, or you can email the office at Lorena, Lorena, .González, Gonzalez, at seattle.gov.
There is one quick question. Do you have any information about the federal paid PSSD, paid sick and safe time expansion?
That was adopted this week. I should have more details, but I have been focused on other things, and I'll follow up and get more information to you, Erin, so that you can share with the group.
For those of you who are on Facebook, we have a closed Facebook group that we use to share out information. So that's the first place to look. I know not everybody is on Facebook, but that's the quickest and easiest way that we're sharing out quick info on these things. So if you are not and you really want to get it, let us know and we'll figure something out for you. I do have one last question. As more funding comes up, are currently not receiving benefits. One, they should get on benefits, and two, are there ways that that the city is also trying to think through some of that, especially with the newly unemployed because of everything going on, like drivers, things like that?
There are a lot of folks at least in the legislative department and the mayor's office that are thinking about this and tracking this closely. And we're in regular communication. I know that the folks from the mayor's office have also been part of the executive branch. So like the Office of Economic Development, Department of Neighborhoods, Office of Immigrant Refugee Affairs, Department of Education, Early Learning. They have been in regular conversation with King County and our state government, and I know that our congressional offices are also thinking about it. It's just, again, we have, you know, in trying to figure out how to thread the needle of regulations that currently are on the books and not yet relaxed. We're trying to figure out what that looks like. Some of the sketches in my brain is like, you know, like maybe it's a grant that goes to a local nonprofit with state dollars that is then, you know, like the community can access it through that channel. I know that the city of Seattle, you know, we have a very clear rule in our books that we don't ask a person's status when they are accessing a city resource. And so that is, at this point in time, the only piece of information, the only thing that I have, but hopefully with my boss coming back as well, that we'll be able to push for more.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. If you are able to stick around, if we get questions, we'll try to pivot back to that.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay. Rivka, you're up.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Rivka with the SPS Partnerships Department. Looks like I have quite a few SPS colleagues here as well. So feel free to chime in if you guys have additional things to share. But I wanted to give updates on what SPS is working on. Our team has actually been working on the childcare situation. First, I just want to make sure everybody knows about the 26 meal sites, including quite a few in Southeast. So 26 sites around the city, started Monday serving lunches from 11 to 1. And all students are welcome. It's not limited to students who qualify for a free and reduced lunch. We've seen the numbers. The numbers are increasing quite a bit day by day. So thank you for everybody who's helped in getting the word out about. And we also, let me post a link just in case. You guys have probably seen it, but I'll post a link in the chat box of where you can see the sites, and some of them have specific instructions about where to go in the building to access the meals. But my colleague, Catherine, probably of you know, has also been working to figure out some meal delivery options for housing sites. So we're trying to figure out different ways to get food to people. We have been working furiously to try to figure out how to get some childcare options up and running for families. And I think we are moving in a positive direction to hopefully have some things coming online next week. Currently, the way 20 or so organizations, some of whom are procedurally, and I know you're not with Launch anymore, but Launch is an example of one of them. Anyhow, they're in most of our elementary schools, and so going through a process of providers to figure out who has capacity to open right now. And I think this group would appreciate that. There's some real equity issues inherent in asking these folks to come to work, right? I just want to name that, but it's a big ask of the child care community to show up and work with kids, and many of them are anxious to get back to work, but obviously there's nervousness, and not everybody has health insurance. I just want to be super clear. This is like healthcare workers, like grocery store workers, this is heroic. The people are stepping up to meet this need right now. And I'm just grateful that so many of them are trying to figure out how to answer this call. And that said, some of them are not able to, because they have workforces that have people who are pregnant, over 60, that are in both categories. And that means, so anyhow, I just want to say that as context and backdrop. We are actively working with this group of childcare providers to identify who is ready to open, to figure out what we need to do to get facilities cleaned. Something we've been looking for is super clear guidance. SPS itself, we are not licensors, we do not regulate childcare, we do not oversee childcare, so we're really relying on DCYF and the licensing bodies to give guidance on what it look like to keep these centers clean. What do you do with primary and secondary exposure? These are some of the issues that we're trying to make sure are clear before places open up. So all that said, right now we are looking at opening, hopefully, and this isn't official yet. We're working through final logistic issues, but we're hoping to be able to open around 10 sites next week. And we've worked on developing priority categories of which families should be served by those. And so obviously those categories include healthcare workers and also people who keep healthcare system running. And that includes custodians and facilities, administrative staff, stuff like that. Responders, so EMTs, firefighters. Also, we want to prioritize low-income families on subsidy who are eligible for childcare subsidy. We know that low-income families are probably struggling right now more than anyone, so we want to make sure that those slots are available to them if they need them. And then also essential SPS staff, like the folks who are making meals happen for families. So we've like a kind of a list of these who are asking the childcare providers to prioritize. And let's see, what else do I want to say about that? Oh, we know that, yeah.
So
do you have a question?
In the interest of time, is there any top line messaging about other than childcare and food that we need to know?
Oh, no. So,
okay.
I mean, I think it's just like we're working on getting childcare up and going. Yeah, one of the, I mean, I will say probably one of the biggest challenges is how to fund it long term, because we don't want to ask families to pay, and there's no identified funding source come down from the state that we know of.
So one other question that's coming up that I've heard from multiple people is academics. I saw that Seattle Public Schools is ramping up some of their academic side information. Is there anything, do you have any quick messages about that for all of us?
So there's going to be through like the SPS TV, and actually other folks, SPS folks, feel free to chime in. I have been deep in the childcare stuff and not as deep in this other stuff. But our curriculum instruction department right now is doing a ton of work to try to develop materials that I believe will be available at the meal sites. And then there are also, I believe starting Monday, there's going to be broadcast lessons through SPS TV and I think on Cairo thing as well. And I think they'll also be streamed on our Facebook page maybe. So yeah, there's different things coming out. Does anybody from SPS want to clarify or add to that?
Just, this is Sarah. Sorry, I can't have my screen right now. My internet's been a little spotty, but I had heard also the efforts in trying to get paper resources out at those 26 sites as well. Learning packets of some sort. So there's work on that as well.
Yeah, the emergency, I saw there's a question, is anyone else besides the district working on providing childcare? Yeah, the YMCA is up and running, Boys and Girls Club is up and running at some sites. And I think there are some SP sites that may be coming back open, though I'm not.
El Centro also has 5 classrooms open. Denise, are those open to anyone, or is that just for your families? You can type your answer if you want, and we'll get it read out loud. Okay, I'm going to keep us moving. Thank you, Rivka. If you have more questions, pop them in the chat, and if we have time, we'll get to them. I have one quick announcement. I'm going to share a screen in a moment. The Right Now Needs Fund, which is run by the Alliance for Education, is continuing to run. So families who may need help with basic needs related to shelter, food, clothing, medical needs, not medical costs necessarily, like they're not paying medical bills as I understand, or school supplies, please have your families contact their principal to put in an application for a Right Now Needs Fund. Right now, the Alliance for Education is prioritizing shelter and keeping families housed. So, and it's open to any SPS families. Schools schools have an allotment of dollars that they can use, and it goes to the principal. If you have a family that doesn't know how to reach their principal, please help them figure out how to connect with the principal, or if the school has a family support worker, they can also go through that. Lisa, I think, is on the line. Is there anything else to add on this?
No, can you hear me?
Yeah, go for it.
No, nothing else to add, but thank you for sharing that. And the one thing I'm aware of is that some families may not feel comfortable contacting their principal. I know that other school staff are also working, so if there's a trusted school staff member, any school staff member should be able to get to the principal and get this going. The other thing folks should know is that some schools have spent down their allotments already for the year. Others have still quite a lot left in their distributions, but we're just, for now, just make sure that requests are coming in. We are pretty sure we're going to be able to backfill if schools have already spent down their funds. So we're really, really encouraging folks to leverage this resource. We can be really fast and it's super low barrier. We don't ask for a lot of information. And as long as schools sign off on the need, we're here to provide the support.
Thank you very much for sharing that. We are working on getting the flyer that you see on your screen translated. So again, watch our social media so that you can also share it out. We'll have it translated in Spanish, Vietnamese, Chinese, and Somali. If you have families that need it in other languages, reach out to me and we'll see what we can do with translations. So, okay, so thank you to everyone for holding tight with those announcements. I hope you found it useful. And we're gonna ask Kai to present on social emotional. We booked this several months ago before we knew that we would be all in little boxes on little screens talking about this. But one of the reasons we decided to keep this is social emotional growth is so important in our students, especially in times like this where things are very different, and we all have to figure out how to pivot and make do and do different support for families. And we also need to lay the groundwork for when students are back in school and they are back in classrooms and they have different questions and different ways of wanting to process their experiences. So Kai is with Seattle Public Schools and she can tell you more about what she has going on.
Thank you, Erin. Yes. Thank you for having us today. I'm here with my coworker, Hyam Elsaharty, and we are from the Health Education Department at Seattle Public Schools, and we are supporting social emotional learning in schools district-wide. So my focus is pre-K through 5, and Hyam's focus schools. Hyam, are you here? Oh, I'm not seeing you.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are.
Okay. Yeah, hi everybody. Happy to join you today under this, unique circumstance. And like I said, I am with her in the Health Education Department as the Social Emotional Learning Consulting teacher. And my primary focus is supporting students in schools 6 through 12.
Our intention, we're going to move into a very brief presentation, and then we're going to spend some time hopefully hearing from you about your needs, and we're going to absolutely respect our end time of 1 o'clock and may even end earlier if that feels appropriate to the group, as we all have plenty of work to do to support the immediate needs of people in our communities. So again, thank you. Erin is absolutely right. This session was intended to be really a broad conversation about our hopes and concerns for social emotional learning in general, and it can be that. We hope to capture some of that information, and our thoughts might be even more specifically honed in on the behavioral needs or family support needs that we are all experiencing in our own households or know of people experiencing in their households as we navigate relationships and decision-making and time management with the people that we share space. So I'm sharing my screen and we're gonna get moving. So I can clarify what the heck I'm talking about. Here we go. Okay. Please share. All right, so social emotional learning, what we're talking about classroom strategies and school-wide strategies for helping students learn the skills around emotional management, setting and achieving goals, recognizing their own feelings and the feelings in others and showing empathy, having positive relationships, and making responsible decisions. This definition comes from CASEL, which is the national body that really sets the standard for social emotional learning, from which our states, Washington state standards have been developed. All right, the purpose of today's session.
Okay, so I just want to reiterate, Erin, thank you so much for saying, it really stuck with me, and that's where my mind was, that, and like Kai said, this was scheduled months back, and reiterating the importance of these skills, especially in response to what's happening now, like I said, in your homes, because these are skills that we can teach our students and our children, and ensuring that we are doing that in all settings will really be helpful in them transitioning the practice of them from home to school and from school to home. So it's just such an interesting time to be having this conversation. But so the purpose for today is, of course, just to share really briefly a little bit about SEL and the direction that we're taking and kind of the scope of our work, and hopefully how your input will also guide our next steps and inform our decisions. We'd like to share with you our skills framework and what we've done so far, and kind of the reasoning behind, I don't want to say urgency, but a little bit of the turning the volume up of social emotional learning in Seattle Public Schools. So what we're hoping to get from you today is a lot of just stories about what you're doing at home, what you feel, what you believe that should be going on in our schools and in our classrooms in regards to SEL, and really honing in on that culturally responsive piece. We want to make sure that all students feel like they belong, that we're also honoring their cultures, traditions, and values within the social emotional learning skills context. And hearing any concerns that you have about what we've currently done, whether it is assessment tools, Kai's going to talk about that for elementary school children, communication, trainings, professional development, education, etc.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I want to say right off the bat that unlike, for example, upper level algebra, that I know I do not have the expertise to teach my children, that families have the expertise to teach their children how to have positive relationships within the context of their communities. And so these skills are a place where schools and families really do need to come together. And I don't think that Seattle Public Schools has done a fantastic job of bridging that gap in the past. And this is one attempt to do so. As is connected to our strategic plan. So social emotional learning fits under the category of high quality instruction, where a goal really is around students feeling safe and welcome. And that means also feeling seen and having reflections of their experience visible throughout their school day. And also predictable systems. So that would be elevating and systematizing the communication that happens between the district and families, between schools and families, and that's something we're interested in hearing more about. And I know that that's a piece that your group has focused on quite a bit and has collected a lot of information around what works in terms of communication. Cultural responsiveness is a top priority for us, and inclusive engagement. So know that we are reaching out to as many communities as will have us, and are hopeful to be in consistent communication with families around these issues. So again, students feeling welcome and safe is a top priority, and that's where our work fits, is around having authentic student voice. So know that we're also meeting, well, the intention is to be meeting with students. We did some focus groups with students, many of which have now been canceled, and are moving, like all of us, are moving some of that work online. So it is absolutely part of our plan to stay in communication with staff, students, and families moving forward. At Seattle Public Schools, we're talking about social emotional skills that are taught in classrooms integrated into academic instruction. So that might be through project-based learning, cooperative learning. We'll talk more about that. Practiced by staff. So that's a piece that I'm very interested in, your take on, your experience of how staff practice their own social emotional skills and what feedback you'd have about your observations of them doing so or not, and demonstrated organizationally. So how does the organization support the wellness and welcoming stance in general? All right.
Okay, I will be super brief just because I want us to get to the questions.
Yeah.
Everything that we do in social emotional learning is and should be guided by standards. So CASEL, the Collaborative of Academic and Social Emotional Learning, they're kind of, I would say, the grandfather of SEL. You see their 5 core competencies on the left, the self management and awareness, the decision-making, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and the social awareness. And then to the right, with the 6 boxes, those are Washington State standards. And you can see that they branched out just a little bit. These just came out at the end of last summer. They're still pretty new to people. And we're just, these are the 2 set of standards that are guiding our work and the work in our schools. Do you want to go to the next one?
Yep.
Okay, and just some quick examples of how social emotional learning currently looks in Seattle Public Schools. A lot of people are most familiar with that direct instruction, things like Ruler, Second Step, Mind Up, and we're really branching out and working with school leaders, counselors, teachers, and within our own office and with department collaboration to help schools adopt and adapt to school-wide practices, classroom and teaching procedures, and really focusing especially on those upper grades, how we can incorporate social emotional learning every day within a math class, within an English class, within art, within science.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. As some know, social emotional skills appear on the elementary school progress report as of this school year. They replace learning practice standards that have been there for years, and in fact look a whole lot like the as indicators that appeared on our own progress reports as students, like, you know, working well with others, for example. The shift has been made to these learning practices, skills and learning practices, with the intention of deepening our understanding that these are skills that can be taught and will develop over time, versus teachers making judgments about the ability of students to, for example, follow directions or not. But a recognition that all of us are developing skills like the ability to both follow directions and ask clarifying questions and give our input in respectful and assertive ways, and that we can track that progress ourselves through self-reflection and as observers of student behavior and of teacher behavior, and use the progress report as a communication tool between school and family. We're going to talk more about that. So you may have seen these indicators. They are not directly linked to the standards, but they're developed based on CASEL standards. All right, and now we have some questions. So we are going to ask a few questions, and the process will be that you are welcome to type answers in the chat or to verbally just throw out answers, and Hyam and I will capture the ideas. They're intended to be broad, and know that we are sincerely open to any of your feedback. The very first is, in what ways do you teach your own children these social emotional skills? And know that what I'm really looking for are stories to take back to teachers directly and say, when you are creating a lesson around achieving goals, for example, please keep these families in mind and know that this is the way that, that your student will be talking about achieving goals with their families. And it is our job to help them do so in a way that's appropriate in their home and at school, so they don't have to code switch. So I pose that to you all. In what ways are folks teaching your own children? And you may have examples from today, setting goals. I know that I do with your children in this time of working together more closely. I'm just going to put that out to the group.
There's one comment in the chat. Sean says, we think a lot and talk about things like love language, apology language, and also just try to show from examples. So that's one.
Modeling, yes, absolutely. Thank you. Talking about love language. Okay, here's the chat. I didn't even have the chat.
Denise, we'll check in with Kai about sharing the presentation.
Absolutely. And I will share links to our site, which has a lot of this information, and you're welcome to have all of it.
Denise, since you're with El Centro and work with older students, can you maybe give us an example of how the prompt shows up, the question shows up in the Latinx community? Feel free to type it, and others, keep it coming. Go for it, Denise. She didn't hear the question. Well, anyway, keep going, people.
Keep going.
Keep going. If not, I'm going to start calling on you.
And, you know, we can move on, actually. If what you have is feedback that's directly related to schools, we can move on, and there's no need to do this in a particular order.
The last one, before we move on, is Ben said he has 3 kiddos, 2 in Seattle Public Schools, and they try to validate feelings and control actions, such as it's okay to be frustrated and angry, it's not okay to hit. Ben, your kids would never hit you, right?
Well, thank you.
Yes. Okay, we can circle back around again as people are thinking about their own practices.
So
what about school practices?
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
In what ways do you hope schools will help students build SEL skills? And we pose this question broadly intentionally to include instruction by teachers, but also how the environments and all adults throughout the building support student learning in these areas.
There's a couple more comments that came in. So talking through emotions.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And did everybody get that question? Can you repeat it one more time?
Absolutely. The question is, in what ways do you hope schools will help students build SEL skills? How might that look in elementary versus middle versus high school? Mm-hmm. Sean, thank you for that comment about how schools are not always set up to help students build SEL skills, especially from a queer trans POC perspective. So you talk about self-advocacy. I would love to hear more if you feel free to share more. Ah, yes. Uh-huh. So the comment here is that schools may see a student's self-advocacy as attitude. Mm-hmm. Developmentally appropriate expression of one's opinion can be read by the by power as attitude, yeah, and a threat. Yeah, that's fantastic that you're talking about how to not internalize it and how to respond when that's happening. Thank you for sharing that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Denise says partnering with community organizations. Totally.
Yes. Are there community organizations that you're finding particularly helpful? Because I think that's critical.
SEL Central, so they're very culturally specific, and we also have some other partners.
Yes.
Who do similar but different work.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. So input here about a student being identified for a group because of being identified as bossy, when really what's happening is a student's confidence being read as aggression. And so might it be fair to say that this comment has connection to professional development and some reflection that staff members need to do around their own biases, and as well as some structural pieces about perhaps communication with you may have been helpful beforehand, before there was a decision to label the behavior that they were seeing in any way. So I wonder if this speaks to professional development and communication with families. Bystander education too, yes. Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you for the specific examples. Kingmakers, yes, and more. Yes, bystander yes. How staff can support the growth of their coworkers in safe ways, but effective ways. Yes. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Should we move on?
Let's move on. I'm curious about your thoughts about the assessment of social emotional learning skills. So as you know, they're currently only being assessed on elementary school report cards. And we recognize that there's some limitations to assessment. And so I'm curious about your thoughts about that. Mm-hmm.
Anybody have thoughts about how this, about the middle and high school especially?
Yes, good question.
Another question for everyone is, since we have a lot of CBO partners, and actually I also know we have some early learning partners, is I'm adopting your question a little, is how the transition from pre-K or maybe elementary to middle and middle to high school, how CBO partners are, or parents are seeing that, and what support do they need from schools?
Can I, Joy? Yeah, I really appreciate that question. Is it really possible for a teacher to assess SEL while also teaching? Is there a possibility for an outside perspective that goes into the assessment? So that's like a two-part, very meaty inquiry. When we think about social emotional learning, what we hope to shift is that perception that social emotional learning is something separate. It is not something separate. People say that all learning is social emotional. We say it because it's true. So teachers should not be assessing SEL as if it were something separate, but instead something that is ingrained into daily practice and into daily instruction and into our relationships, both student to teacher, and student to student, and frankly, teacher to teacher as well. And the outside input, I think Kai would be really great actually to talk about that parent piece as well. There should be two-way communication between students and families about their students' SEL skills, abilities, and strengths, because these could look different in different environments. If a student is exhibiting a strength at home, why aren't they exhibiting it at school? Are there not enough supports in place? Are those skills not being nurtured in a culturally responsive way? So there does need to be two-way communication between parents and teachers, as well as teacher to teacher if students are able to demonstrate certain skills in maybe art or gym and not in their regular classroom. So this is a much larger conversation than the single view of the classroom teacher.
It's our hope that assessment will be based on teacher observation, and that includes staff. So it might be other staff that are working closely with students, especially for students who access services like ELL services, special education services, and as well as adult family perspective and the child's own perspective of their student's own perspective on their developing skills. So we are fumbling around trying to figure out the most appropriate ways to engage with families about their assessment of their students' skills. Landing, I think, primarily on in-person communication being the most effective, and yet I'm curious to know your thoughts about the best ways for families to stay in communication with us and with teachers. I really wish. Wonderful. Interested in ways families can be more involved, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I agree, Joy, and I'm wondering if your priority would be to give input or to receive information on what's happening in the schools, or if those are both important. So Sean, interesting. So asking here if it'd be possible to see a teacher's strengths and areas for growth early in the year. That's really interesting. If there's a way to have more of an open dialogue about the adult social emotional skills and where they are in development, and some transparency around their own growth plan for example, following through with goals and meeting their own deadlines of staying in communication with families, for example, or managing their emotions in the classroom.
Sean, I'm smiling at that because as I grew as a classroom teacher, I realized that I had to do that. I taught high school, and I would send it in a form of a letter, which I'm sure a lot of parents get. But I made it very real, and I was very transparent with my hopes and goals, not just for the students, but for myself, especially that relational piece. Mm-hmm. Because if my families and students aren't trusting me as the teacher, if I can't possibly help your child grow academically, mm-hmm. Let alone socially and emotionally. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like that's something that your wish should become a request.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great ask.
That's going in. Yes. So Joy, that is exactly it. That's what we've been hearing again and again, that even if what families do is write a narrative about their student, that that narrative gets paired with the other documentation that has been following that student along, some of which is helpful and some of which is not. And so it's in-person communication that is likely going to be the most effective, and where the social emotional skills can be developed between the adults and modeled for the students.
I'm going to read that comment out loud so people on the
Please do.
phone can see it. It says, it's too easy to read a student's file at the beginning of the
So
year.
it says here, it's too easy to read a student's file at the beginning of the year and think you know who they are. I would like to go in and talk to the teacher about who my child is and who knows better than the parent. Yeah, thank you. I just want to acknowledge that this format is tricky for this conversation, and Hyam and I both hesitated to, we would have had documents to look at and be in person to facilitate this conversation in a different way. And here we are, managing the best that we all can. So thank you for your time. And I will share everything that we have and know that we are wide open to continued communication. And Erin, if you and I could stay in communication about if there are representatives who want to continue in a smaller panel moving forward, that would be great.
Great, thank you. Thank you to Kai and Hyam. Everybody, if your camera's on, wave at them, say thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Like they said, we were hoping to do this in person, but we've all pivoted, and thank you to all of you for using your social emotional, growing social emotionally and pivoting with us, and hopefully developing a new skill of staying connected in different ways and growing relationships in a totally different way. We are right at time, but before we sign off, if there is one or two people that want to do a really quick, let's pause to do gratitude for joining everyone today. And the reason we do this is sometimes especially when working remotely or there's competing interests all around us, a lot of news coming out, it's really easy to forget why we're here or to get sucked into something. But when we pause and take a moment, doesn't have to be a long moment, but just pause, we can kind of recenter and show appreciation to each other, which will help us all. So I'm going to pause this for about 5 seconds. And if somebody wants to share, they can type it, or if they want to turn their mic on, please feel free to verbalize it so we can all hear it. Who would like to share? I will share mine. Thank you all to all of you. I really appreciate you taking an hour out of your day to join us to hear and see each other in a virtual way. We were really wondering, would anybody be able to or be willing to show up for this conversation, knowing that it's really different, and you did. So thank you to everyone. Anyone else? Sean says, I really appreciate everyone on this call. It's a great way to pause and dream about our future together with other people. Very, very true. One more? Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Please, one last update from SESEC. Next Friday, we are planning on having a public release of our family engagement data. The design team talked yesterday, and we are really, we decided to move forward with this because we think that some of the family engagement survey data that we have can be really relevant in this time, especially the information on how to communicate with families, and especially families of color and families where English is not the first language, since we are all working very, very differently and very, with less in-person relational contact, we're having to learn new skills. So we think we have some data from the survey set that can help everyone think about it differently, and also think about it in ways that really reach families and center families of color first. So please join us next Friday, 1 o'clock, right, Mindy? Webinar registration is in your chat box.
I think it's 1:30.
1:30. This is why we have Mindy who keeps me on track. Again, watch our Facebook and sometimes I remember to tweet things out, or our website and the blog for the registration info. We have space for 100 people on the call, and we will be recording it afterwards, but we'd love to have you on. If there's more than 100 people, we may be able to, we'll figure something out. But join early so you get one of those 100 spots. More like 95, because some of us, like Mindy and I, will have to be there, and we'll beat you to. Okay, thank you, everyone. See you soon.